in Africa, we see a lot of uprisings, planning for uprisings, plotting for uprisings in several African countries. The events on the African continent, therefore, as predicted much earlier myself, in 2017, I said before 2020, 13 African countries would have undergone either soft regime change, soft coups, or violent regime change through uprising, which now seem to be real. The signs that and symbols that we see are the real symbols and the signs that more is to come against African governments. What do we do then? There is a new method of changing governments strategically placed in the United States of America by George Soros. George Soros funds civil societies, civil disobedience, civil violence in Africa. It is upon you Africans and African heads of state, wherever you are, as you convene, as you plan to convene next month or before the end of this month in Addis Ababa, to understand the magnitude of this regime change strategy. Many wars are taking place, internal strife, conflicts like the one in Cameroon, Amazonia, like the one in Biafra, Boko Haram, and then in Biafra, like the one in Libya. But the theme is the same. Regime change, uprising. Is it a matter of taking over our resources? You see, the war in Congo has erupted again. Unknown militias have arrived in Congo, restarted the war, and it is going on. All these culminate to one thing. Are we ready to be independent? As I said last week, this week, are people in Africa ready to accept the results of elections? Elections everywhere in Africa are bringing the chaos we see. The people of Africa seem to be divided after elections or before elections. Is Africa ready for elections? Do we need elections in Africa? If so, are we tolerant enough to accept the results? Are we ready? Which method can we use in Africa to make sure that there is hope for the countries and there is hope and the future of Africa is guaranteed? Viewers, the High Court in Malawi today or yesterday was hearing a case when the president had already been sworn in. If the president of Malawi has been sworn in, then the High Court is hearing the case. Is that not a disaster, an accident in waiting? Whether this will make us have a peaceful Africa remains to be seen. And may God help us to build a better Africa. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, viewers. Thank you very much for watching Punchline Africa Television. Thank you very much, listeners and viewers across the globe, the continent of Africa. Good morning, Africa has already gone. We are now doing good afternoon, Africa. Thank you very much, viewers. We delayed because of technical hiccup, and our satellite now seems to have picked us up. Let's go. The topic today is diplomatic leaks. Under the show Diplomatic Leaks, the topic is, do sanctions change governments in Africa? Do sanctions by the United States of America that they unilaterally put on the people of Africa, do they change governments in Africa? Across the globe, you know it, across the continent of Africa, several people have been put on sanction list. Is America using sanctions as another tool of targeting African leaders? Is America using sanctions as another tool to create a regime change, violent military takeovers? But we know the people in Africa. How come that America has not put sanctions on Paulo Biya? Paulo Biya violates everything on earth, including his own shadow. Buhari violates everything on earth, murders his own people every day, wages war on his own people, the Biafran people, slaughters them every day. Boko Haram slaughters people every day. Al-Shabaab slaughters people every day. But they have never been put on sanction list. When we wanted Al-Shabaab, when Kenya wanted Al-Shabaab to be put on sanction list, the Americans stood up and said, no, they will not accept. So what is the motive of sanctions? What do sanctions serve? Do sanctions change governments in Africa? Do sanctions strangulate, politically strangulate nations in Africa? Do they cause a state of despondence in states in Africa? Are they helpful to the opposition in Africa? Do they help to change governments? Is the strategy worth looking at? Those are the questions that I want us as the panel in the next few minutes to look at the 45 minutes, and then we go home. I started by introducing my panel, Miriam Ogutu down in Nairobi. Good morning. Good afternoon.
A very good afternoon to you, Doctor, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning to our viewers wherever they're tuned in today from across the globe.
I'm in a good morning session now. Good afternoon. Thank you very much across in Nairobi, Miriam Ogutu, and across in Narok, Istawish Olesesana. Good afternoon.
A very good afternoon indeed to you, Dr. David Masanga from the Political Command Center. Good afternoon to Miriam Ogutu, as well as, of course, Sharon Gitonga and Sean Wesong, and all our viewers are watching this program in Africa and the rest of the world. My pleasure to join you on this program.
Thank you very much. Across in Nairobi County, Sharon Gitonga, good afternoon.
Very good afternoon to you, Dr. Matsanga, at the Political Command Center, my colleague Miriam Ogutu and my colleague panelists Samuel Tawish and Daniel Wesonga, and to all our viewers who are watching us in Africa and the entire globe. It is a pleasure to be part of this show. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sharon. Thank you for the beautiful colors. You are colored today, that the show is going to be colorful. Good afternoon in Nairobi County near I don't know where you are, but on Friday it is going to be hot in Nairobi. Hot. However, Baba has called over 1 million people to arrive on the city. And you know Nairobi is Baba's stronghold. The number of people coming, I hope that guy with the dog, you remember the guy who demonstrated with the dog, Miriam, the big dog. I hope he's still alive. Today, this time we're together, wishing Baba a good journey. Let Baba handle this nation after Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. I might remain alone supporting him this time, but I'm not bothered. I will support. Thank you very much across to CBD, none other than Wesonga. Thank you very much for partnering up with Sharon Gitonga in colors. Good morning, good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Very, very good morning to you indeed, Dr. Masanga David. Good afternoon to Miriam Mogutu, my brother Tarisho Lesasina, my sister and fellow panelist Sharon Gitonga, and our viewers here in Nairobi, Kenya, Africa, and the rest of the world. Indeed, it is a pleasure, Dr. Masanga, to be on the platform this afternoon.
Thank you very much. That is it, Miriam. Now you open up the topic for us, do sanctions in Africa. Then I can give my overview. For this time, I'm strictly restricting it to 5 minutes. When you see 5 minutes is over, raise the card. Miriam.
All right, Doc, thank you so much for that introduction. And we know that in the recent history, sanctions programs have also almost become the de facto response from the United States, the United Nations, and the European Union to African crises involving armed conflict, human rights abuse, and other issues. Some countries have been under sanctions and for a long time, and some of those countries in the continent include Burundi, Central African Republic, Cote d'Ivoire, Democratic Republic of Congo, Eritrea, Zimbabwe, among others. And on September 17th, declaring the ongoing civil war in Ethiopia a national security threat to the United States, President Joe Biden signed a sweeping executive order authorizing sanctions on the Ethiopian government, the Eritrean government, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, and several other entities the U.S. government deems to be contributing to the conflict. And of course, the other countries in West Africa like Mali, who have also been sanctioned, and other countries across the continent. So sanctions has been used as a tool to coerce a lot of African countries and other countries indeed across the world, perhaps to toe to the line, or to hopefully by these other Western powers that they can get a certain result by putting these sanctions in place.
Thank you very much, Miriam. The question of sanctions, this is now my 5 minutes starts now. If you can add me another 2, I will be very happy. From time to time, and time memorial, the Americans have always worked with double standards. The double standards of America has actually created several wars since the first war in Democratic Republic of Congo, where America voted in favor of sending United Nations peacekeepers, and the disappearance of Patrice Lumumba. We have never settled on this continent. If you look around the continent, most of the wars that sprang after the post-independence from Jonathan Jones Savimbi, the apartheid war in South Africa, the war in Maputo, the war in Rwanda, the war in Guinea-Conakry, and the Guinea across, the war of Amir Cabral against the Portuguese, the Sahrawi war, and several other wars that have taken place in Africa. America has always played a key role. I'll take a case study of Savimbi. The Americans gave, supported, equipped logistically General Savimbi, to mutilate, to kill, to maim the people of Angola. They supported him logistically because the NATO forces, Agustino NATO, was very much aligned to the West, to the East, where China, Russia, Cuba were pumping in arms in order to fight Savimbi. We did not see sanctions coming against any of the leaders who have mushroomed and they have gone on the side of America. Governments upon governments from 1960s, 70s, 80s, military coups took place on the continent of Africa, instigated, played, supported, equipped by, at times, the CIA and the American government openly, overtly, and covertly. We have never seen sanctions being used. The question of sanctions arrived on the scene early against the country called Zimbabwe. In 2002, Zimbabwe conducted its elections. After they disputed the elections, the Americans and the European Union, Commonwealth, and other countries decided to impose sanctions on the people of Zimbabwe. They never said sorry for the loss of Savimbi. Savimbi might have been fighting for the American hegemony on the African continent, but Savimbi was an African. We lost a son from Huambo, a great son who started fighting imperial powers that had colonized Angola, ended up dead. I didn't see any message from the American Secretary of State Cohen or any other secretary, Madame Albright, or the rest who were, or Henry Kissinger, who was the main mover of the war in Angola. They kept quiet. When sanctions were imposed on the people of Zimbabwe, several countries saw a targeted sanctions going to kill a country that was a basket of Africa, where everything was rosy, where weddings, shoppings, manufacture of cloth that are sold in Marks and Spencer, in all these Walmart, all these places in the United States, the uproar was coming from Zimbabwe. We saw Zimbabwe going down, deteriorating. From 2002, since America put sanctions on this small country, targeted its people, sanctions have killed the people. But has it changed the regime? No. Sanctions have not. The intention of sanctions on the people of Zimbabwe was to change Mugabe forcefully. And unfortunately, Mugabe died honorably, was buried honorably. His own people, the parliament, decided to take on him and ask him to step aside because of age, but not sanctions. When Mugabe died, the sanctions continued. The sanctions were heaped on the people of Zimbabwe. These sanctions have continued as we speak today. Targeted sanctions, commercial sanctions, economic sanctions, targeted all wholesomely, targeted Africans. Yesterday we saw a list of accusations labeled against Ugandans. We have seen several Kenyans also on the list. We have seen several Africans on the list. But do these sanctions that are targeting people, individuals, do they help to change government? Does anybody in Uganda, for example, in opposition, think that by detaining or by America issuing a sanction against one general, will they get freedom? No. If you are looking for freedom in Uganda because one general has been put under sanctions, you must be the most mad dog around the planet, because it won't change the conditions on the ground. It will only harden the stance by the ruling party, by the ruling government, to make sure that they still stick on the same sanctions. Don't remove governments. In Kenya here, we had Mr. Wako being put under sanctions even when he had left the civil service. He was even a UN rapporteur giving information on justice and SADC in the United Nations. Sanctions are put on African countries to strangulate them, to create chaos within the systems. But why is it that the sanctions are not put on the right people? For example, Paul Biya in Central African area, in Cameroon, he has been butchering people for 42 years. While Paul Biya is allowed to fly to get medical treatment in Switzerland, no sanctions have been put on him. He's able to fly and go to the United States. He's able to fly. His wife is able to go and service her hair. You know, Paul Biya's wife has hair which costs $1 million. That hair you see with her on the head is $1 million. She goes to service that hair like a car in the States. She sends it in the States. We agree. In Nigeria, for example, Buhari and a group of about 15 to 17 people, they have stashed money in the United States banks. While back in Nigeria, there is no generator, there is no electricity, no new hydroelectric power since the creation of the first power installations in the 60s. Do sanctions help to change, or they don't? Look at Nigeria, the slaughter of human beings at a very serious rate. The slaughter of human beings at a serious rate in Nigeria. The Fulani killing the Igbo, the type of murders that are taking place. Have they targeted the leaders of that country? The answer is no. We haven't seen any targeted sanctions against those people in Nigeria who murder people, who kill people, who slaughter people on a daily basis. America works with Buhari to take the oil. Where oil is, sanctions are not given to the people of that country. I therefore come to a conclusion by saying, Miriam, you'll add me another one or 2 minutes by saying, yes, the targeted sanctions, for example, the ones of Uganda, I believe you have read all the reasons. But do they help any member of opposition to change? Does it help the government? Does it change what is on the ground? It is like going to collect signatures, that you are taking signatures to the ICC to accuse President Museveni. You are wasting your time. President Museveni has already put a special division of the High Court that handles ICC. He has domesticated ICC. So you don't need to collect Miriam signatures that you are taking them to the Hague to tell Mr. Karim Khan that I want you to come and investigate President Museveni. There is already a court in Kampala. So the people who, some of them who do these things in opposition, like Besigye and others, they should learn. They should ask people, experts like us, who know more about international obligations. If you have studied medicine, stick to medicine. If you have studied a guitar, stick to a guitar, play it. But ask experts, Miriam, men who know international politics, how it works. International relations. You cannot get signatures and take them to the ICC. Nobody will accept them. They will refer them to Kampala office. There is an outreach office in Kampala, which will now give them a report as to whether they can initiate a procedure. There is a court in Kampala with 3 judges waiting to take on cases of genocide, cases of crimes against humanity, cases of war crimes. It is in Kampala. So when America is targeting, we always have ripple effects. The soldiers of UPDF that America is targeting, Miriam, are the same UPDF who are commanding, trying to restore peace in Mogadishu. Tomorrow, President Museveni is going to retaliate and say, fine, thank you very much. I am pulling my troops out of Mogadishu. Whom will you have as a peacekeeper? On several occasions, Kagame has been targeted, or his commanders have been targeted. But he has told them, I'm getting out. And do you hear any of those sanctions anymore? They cool down. If you target a country that is doing a great job, the officers that are doing a job, I'm not saying these officers that they target have done nothing. They might have the American intelligence system in Kampala might have documented some human rights abuses that they have done. But is it the best way to handle a situation of a country that is also, and at the same time you play double standards? You don't issue sanctions against Al-Shabaab. You remember when Kenya wanted to gazette Al-Shabaab as a designated terrorist group. You know how many countries voted against? America was the first one. So I want you to tell me, why double standards? And I want the American people to understand me, that I'm not against what they want to do anywhere in the world. Miriam, I told you a few months ago that the Americans are hovering around this world. There will be a conflict. The conflict is there in Addis Ababa. It is there. It's a huge one. The Ethiopian troops are saying they are capturing Tigray, but it is not yet finished. You can win the war, but you have not won the conflict. There are 2 things that you should win. Win both of them, then a country can be stable. The Ethiopian conflict is a strong one. But my question is, why double standards? Paul Obiya should be put on sanctions. Paul Obiya should be in jail. As soon as he steps in Switzerland for medical treatment, arrest him. Because Paul Obiya has killed more people on this continent for 42 years than any other regime. Why have we spared Paul Obiya? Why have we spared Paul Obiya to bring us money? Why do American banks allow 15 to 18 Nigerians to be banking money in the United States of America, billions of dollars, knowing very well that this money has come from corruption, and this money is in the banks in the US. Who benefits from the money that is banked in United States banks? Who benefits? It's not the African in the Delta region of Nigeria. It's not the African in Kano, in Maiduguri, in Yoruba land, in Enugu, in Ibadan, in Port Harcourt, in Onitsha. Most of these people are suffering. But Americans know who is banking. All this oil extracted from Nigeria, where does it go? Who? Why is it that they don't stop the banking of that oil money in their country? Then you come and target people who are even doing a good job somewhere else. Without Ugandan troops in Sector 1 in Mogadishu, these guys would have moved up to here, would be dead people by now, all of us. Without Sector 1, UPDF. So let's not antagonize a situation where we cannot manage. And I just want to tell my brothers, those in opposition in Uganda, that I have been the longest opposition leader amongst them. None of them can beat me on the record. 37 years in opposition against President Museveni. But they have come, they have hijacked a situation, and they think they are smarter. But they used to eat with him. Miriam, they turned around when the plate was removed. Me, I've been consistent. There are good things that the president does, which I said, hallelujah. For example, I've told you, water. My place is mountainous, but there's piped water on top of the mountain. Miriam, should I now tell the world that that is not development? No. I'm not myopic. I'm not such a leader. At my age, to tell people that there is no piped water in my place. My mother drinks piped water. It's tapped. It is only in the compound. She opens. She tells the people, bring me the water, warm it. It has reached home. It was not there. These are some of the things. Give a credit where it is due. The government has done something. The question of Somalia, you give them a credit. UPDF has done a job in Sector 1 in Mogadishu. Without them, we would be now, all of us, under the 60 feet. The terrorists would have come as far as Garissa to kill us. Together with the Kenyan KDF, they have done a job. Give them a credit. So that's when we are targeting people, look at what they did to Zimbabwe. Look at the type of buses that Zimbabwe yesterday inaugurated. Have you seen? Over 200 buses, new, air-conditioned with everything, including toilets. Is that a country that you wanted to kill? Why do you kill it? Do sanctions help to remove government, or sanctions only punish people? The ordinary people. Targeted sanctions hurt. There is nothing like a targeted sanctions. If you are targeting a minister, for example, you are targeting, as I finished, Miriam, you are targeting a minister of foreign affairs of Zimbabwe, not to travel to the US. How will he be meeting other foreign ministers in the world to get medicine, to know the quota for COVID medicines that are being given? You have killed people. How will he talk about malaria? How will he talk about diseases, leprosy? How will he talk about cholera? How will he talk about Ebola in those sanctions, in those meetings? A targeted sanction, whether on individuals, retards the development of Africa. America should use other methods. America should come in and help hold the governments accountable. You don't need to, let me ask you, you don't need to hold junior. Why are you holding? You see the point I'm making. Why do you hold a junior officer accountable? Why do you hold the commander of Paul Obia's army accountable? And you fail to hold Paul Obia. Why? Why don't you just put sanctions on Paul Obia? How much amount of money does that commander bank in the American banks? It might be $10,000. But Paul Obia has banked billions in the United States banks. You know why they don't touch him? Because they will not. They don't have authority now to take the money. That's why they don't touch him. They wait until he's out of power. When he has no authority, then they freeze the accounts. Why don't we freeze the accounts of Paul Obia in Switzerland, such that Paul Obia does not go to Switzerland for medical treatment, like we have done? For me, I've helped the people of Cameroon by filing an application in the old Bailey that should Mr. Paul Obia ever step in the British hospital anywhere, he will not leave. He will not leave London. Where I am, I'm swearing my name here. If Mr. Paul Obia ever comes to United Kingdom, he will have to serve, to stay in that hospital permanently until we resolve the matters of Cameroon. Myself and my international lawyer, Chief Taku, we have done it. We have done it. We are waiting for Mr. Paul Obia to ever step in the United Kingdom. We shall serve the warrant on the hospital bed. The summons. Those are that is deterrent. But the Americans have left Paul Obia to fly, to kill, to maim, to destroy the Amazonians. We are watching. We are watching. They have gone for a poor country, a country that is very good, where there are more whites than there are whites in Cameroon. Zimbabwe is being harassed. A country called Zimbabwe is being killed every day, every night. It has struggled. Zimbabwe has come out of the shackles. Mnangagwa is pushing the country. He's inaugurating projects, water boreholes, buses, transport, roads. He has listened. He has listened to some of us who are his friends. I'm proud to be associated with such a person. He has listened. Let's do development, infrastructure, like Kenyatta is doing infrastructure in Kenya. You can hate Kenyatta to hell. You can go and hate him until you reach hell. But Miriam, give me another 2 minutes or 3. You hate him until hell. But you will not remove the road that Uhuru Kenyatta, the roads that Uhuru Kenyatta has built. Show me any president who built those roads, apart from Kibaki, who left. If there was a bad president who took over from Kibaki, he would have eaten the money and not finished the project. Am I wrong? But His Excellency President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta of Kenya has put up a road. Nairobi is becoming Stockholm. If you have ever gone to Stockholm, like I have several times, it's a flyover, double decker. You don't know who is down here. Kenya, on these roads, anybody coming to Nairobi now, it is a city Once they finish construction, it is a city worth coming. It's not even in Johannesburg. Because in Johannesburg, you can't sleep properly. Your goods will be stolen. Is there any theft more in Nairobi anymore? Kenyatta has done a job. But people threatened. The Obama administration threatened him when he took over with the ICC cases. This was an American hegemon. They don't like ICC, but they want others to go to ICC. Hello, tuambiane ukweli. Tuambiane ukweli. Americans don't like the ICC. You can't catch one American and take one, even a half an American, half who walks with legs cut off, and deliver him in the Hague. They will come and bomb that place. They have told you they don't like ICC. But they want us Africans to be shipped there. They have done it. You have seen how many Africans are there. Saidi Gaddafi, the man I stood for, stood and wrote letters and bargained, hated myself with Besuda. We almost killed each other. We almost boxed each other because of Saidi Gaddafi. I was telling Gaddafi, Besuda, why don't you indict the terrorists who came to take over Libya? Wasn't Gaddafi telling us the terrorists are here? ISIS is in Libya. It is cutting people's heads. Black people from the south of Africa, all the continent who are black like us, we are cut off. Our heads are cut off with machete by Libyan terrorists. They cut us off. They are killing us. I am happy today, this son of Muammar Gaddafi. We remain there. I've never seen him, and since I saw him in 1997 in the London School of Economics at a lecture that both of us attended. I wish him good luck for the presidency of Libya. He remembers me. Of recent, he has sent a message. Babuko remembers me. His lawyer sent a message 2 days ago. Miriam, these are good news now for me. Say thank you very much. We shall invite you to Ivory Coast. Because I struggle for the truth. Bemba, when he was released, sent me a message. Said thank you very much. I told him don't get involved in DRC politics because that is what they want to use you. The French take you back home. Avoid it, let it cool down. The younger man has accepted. But I don't know whether you see my point, the panel, as I leave. My point is sanctions, the current type of sanctions targeted at certain people don't help anybody in opposition in Africa. And anybody in opposition in Africa should not jubilate because one commander has been put under sanction. You are rubbish. You don't even have any brain. Actually, if I hear you talk like that, it doesn't help you, Mr. Besigye or Bob Wine or what. They are coming here on Friday on this rally of Azimio La Umoja. They are welcome. Some of us will be supporting Baba quietly. But the Baba should remember that I am the only veteran left. When these people were eating with the man they don't like now, I was never, and I have never eaten with him. So you can invite them to glorify that, oh, they are opposition. What opposition? So opposition in Africa, be honest. Don't rely on sanctions. Sanctions, if Changarai woke up today from his dead grave and saw what he did to the people of Zimbabwe, he would ask to be buried 12 feet deeper. Because Changarai did not listen to Masanga. How many times did I fight, exchanged blows in London, in conferences, in meetings with Changarai's people and Changarai himself, to the extent that Changarai wrote a book. As I finish, Miriam, let me show you the book that Changarai wrote, which he put a full chapter, very annoyed with me, in his book, The Deep End, even accusing me of things that I've never done. I was only warning him that, boss, don't call for sanctions to kill your own brothers and sisters. Sanctions in Africa don't help us in opposition. America should try other methods instead of targeting a few people and that they don't travel. They will eat, but they will continue to do what they were doing before. Miriam, have you seen? The officers that you are sanctioning, you are endangering us. You are endangering Ugandans. They will now suspect who is this, who put our names. Don't you see how people are going to be even beaten more? So American sanctions don't help, especially to people who are playing a role. Museveni will retaliate and say, look, I will pull out my troops. If it was Kagame, he would have already said, I'm pulling out my troops from Darfur. You get the other troops to go there. Where will you get them? Where? With this corona issue, where will you get them, the troops? Who will want to go to Darfur? So therefore I submit, ladies and gentlemen, sanctions in Africa only help to destroy the few developments, economic development, political strife, steps, facets, social fabric that we have. The sanctions in Zimbabwe destroyed Zimbabwe. They should never be allowed at all. Sanctions, whether targeted, wherever they are, anywhere on the continent of Africa, must be condemned. America should look for another way of getting working relationship with African countries. The double standards from Angola, Savimbi, Zimbabwe, where they have put sanctions, Libya, the failure to put sanctions on Al-Shabaab is a very indicting factor on Americans. Why did they fail to put sanctions on Al-Shabaab? Do they have ulterior motives? I submit.
Very well, Doc. Thank you so much for that. And just listening to you, I think two things stood out for me. The double standards when it comes to how these sanctions are issued. And of course, a lot of these sanctions sometimes are very counterproductive. So I don't know what stood out for you there from what Doc has said, Sharon Gitonga. Samuel Tawish. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Gitonga, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Miriam, and of course, Dr. Matsanga, for your robust conversation, especially when you are talking about how sanctions are deployed. And I also largely agree with what Miriam has said about the issue of double standards when it comes to the kind of people who are targeted. When it comes to the issuing of sanction, and you outrightly talked about how Zimbabwe has actually dissipated dry like a morning like a dew, and now Zimbabwe's, if you look at the economic meltdown, it is actually at a blink of collapse, and forcing even the foreign currency and the shortages of money. And you asked a very fundamental question question as to why, they're actually not put to the right people. And I think this is it's an issue of a modern day apartheid, by the West. And we actually, I mentioned this early in the morning, why, instead of actually, giving robust, support, to the African countries, even when you talk about, COVID, like, for example, what has happened with the, COVID-19 vaccinations, they are quickly, to impose, red, putting up red listing, different African countries, simply because they have actually discovered, the variant. And probably, I think it's high time Africa, heads of state work together in solidarity and cooperation to see how we could actually stop depending on the West for survival, because this culture of dependency, and you talk about color and, racism, balkanization, has played out so much evident during the, even during, the thick fog of COVID-19 and the reception, especially by the West. It's quite unfortunate that we continue to suffer, the outcome of the biggest polluters. And even when, even if they aid to us, this comes as a debt. I remember during the globalization, discussion, we asked, the biggest question was, is it actually globalization or, colonization at the detriment of our own resources? Why do we keep on having to, consume remnants or, receive even vaccines that are even close to hit the shelf life? As I conclude, I'm just reminded of, recently, probably a month ago, when the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, was, the chief guest during the second edition of the International Blue Economy that was held in Mozambique. One of the things that he laid out, he actually urged the African countries to come together, and develop smart solutions to unlock the blue economy, while protecting the health and sustainability of the oceans. He also urged, collaborations amongst even African countries. Could we be able to trade amongst ourselves? And probably this is going to help us in developing a common position to be able to tackle these kind of challenges. We talk about the ocean threats and challenges that we continually have, and to sustainably help us to utilize the opportunities that our ocean offers. Thank you. So I think it's a wake-up call for African countries to work together in cohesion for us to even be able to maybe trade amongst ourselves. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Sharon Gitonga, for that. Samuel Tawish, I don't know what have you picked?
Miriam, we have Alikat. Somewhere, just a minute. Alikat was. We have a guest from Zimbabwe. You've seen him down there. Let him try and tell us something about his sanctions in Zimbabwe. Then Samuel, please. Then Samuel can come. Alcatel.
Dr. Matsanga, thank you. I'm Alcatraz from Zimbabwe. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about sanctions, which have caused massive suffering in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a typical example of one of the countries in Africa which has been greatly affected by sanctions. I don't understand what a foreign country can impose some policies to another country. For the Zimbabwe, sanctions is called Zidera. It was crafted in 2002 in the United States of America. It says Zimbabwe must respect, the authorities must respect human rights, stop corruption whatsoever. That's how the doctrine was crafted, sort of. To my surprise, for more than 100 years, Zimbabwe was under British colonial rule. There were massive human rights abuses whatsoever. How can they tell us democracy? They want to be prefects of democracy and tell us the platform and the modem on how to engage them, but they are the tutors of oppression, repression, human rights abuses. More so, the colonialists should do away with our politics. What is the purpose of sanctioning Zimbabwe, which is in the African SADC region? If you are in West, in Europe, do your policies there in Europe, leave Zimbabwe alone. And the sanctions and the other NGOs are also an agenda for regime change. You know that. It's very clear. What led to the formation of NGOs and the imposition of sanctions is for the regime change, so that they can do that recolonialism, neo-colonialism, in fact, to take back our resources. I think I can end there for now.
Thank you very much. Let's cross back to Tawish Samuel Olisisana.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Masanga, and thank you, our colleague panelist. Indeed, I would want to agree with almost everything that you've said, to the extent that sanctions really hurt the ordinary people. And I think this has been widespread and is something that we've continued to witness on the African continent, and more so on those countries that have experienced sanctions, especially if we are to give a case study of Zimbabwe. And Dr. Masanga has given us, of course, explicitly talked about Zimbabwe and how the sanctions came to be and how it is really been detrimental in terms of the economy of Zimbabwe, in terms of hurting the ordinary mwananchi. And the kind of the intended purpose by the end of the day is that which has not been achieved. Because when you talk about targeted sanctions, when you have these individuals who continue to enjoy their normal lifestyle, who continue to lead a luxury life, they continue to take their children to better schools, they continue to get even medical services in the best of hospitals, not only in Zimbabwe or in these sanctioned African countries, but globally. It speaks volumes that these sanctions really are more of the ordinary people than those they refer as targeted individuals. So, Dr. Masanga, I agree with you to that extent. But again, if this is what, for example, the Western power countries are using as a foreign tool to try and say to force into submission the sovereign nations in the African continent so that they can be able to align with their foreign policy, this should not be the way to go, because by the end of the day, it is affecting the ordinary people and not the elites in our society. But Dr. Masanga, also we must get now and ask ourselves, what is the root cause? What normally informs these sanctions? Because if there are vices or things that say governments are not doing the right way, these things as well must be spoken about. They must be reprimanded. For example, mismanagement of resources. When you talk about, say, corruption, when you talk about accountability and transparency in terms of having a fair, credible elections in the African continent. More often, I think this has been used as an excuse or a reason to have the sanctions imposed on the African countries. So I will really call upon that, in as much as we wouldn't quite advocate for these sanctions in our continent here or in individual countries, but we must also attempt in as much as we can really to do the right thing so that we do not fall into the traps of those foreign nations, especially those that do want us to switch or bend towards their foreign policies. So, Dr. Masanga, there's a very big exam and challenge on us as well to do the right thing. For example, there's a question of human rights abuses, the question of ensuring that we have free, fair, and credible election, the question of corruption, Dr. Masanga, for example, which has become a very big cancer, not only in Kenya, in Uganda, but I think largely in the African continent. What is it that we can do as a continent really to be able to tackle and address these challenges so that we have reason enough even to fight off these sanctions that are continually imposed on the African nations? Dr. Masanga, I submit.
Thank you very much. Miriam has disappeared. Okay. Daniel Wesonga, bring it to the close for us.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Masanga David. And of course, I've read so much about sanctions, and especially American sanctions in Africa and the rest of the world. And one thing that actually comes out clearly is that sanctions from America have been always to serve a purpose of the American interest. You realize that any country that does not toe and that does not kowtow to the American demands and interests is actually defined as a country which is a failed state, and the leader who is in that country is most probably will be put under sanctions. And that has the way America has been actually discriminating and actually undermining other countries across the world. It started with Cuba and many South American countries where Fidel Castro and his leadership was actually put on sanctions for so many times. Would it have been not for the Russian Confederacy, Cuba will not have maybe advanced in terms of even the economic influence and even in the military power. But the US has to come to realize that perhaps with imposing sanctions on other countries, also it is isolating itself. A case study is in the case of Cuba. You realize that when Cuba was put under US sanctions, it actually opened a door of opportunity. Cuba today is the best country when it comes to healthcare. It has well-trained doctors, even to the extent that Kenya is also getting doctors from Cuba. Cuba has the highest literacy rates in that people from that particular country are so much educated. When you look to it in that regard, Zimbabwe, my brother Alcatraz will tell you that in Zimbabwe, people are very, very much educated. In fact, it is you, Dr. Masanga, who used to tell us that in Zimbabwe, people do not have these kind of street lights, that perhaps they do not have police officers sometimes in where we have street lights, because when they see a street light coming on, meaning that motorists should stop, there's no need of having a police officer to stop you. So that tells you that despite these far-reaching sanctions, which have actually been having a very big brunt on the economy of Zimbabwe, Zimbabweans have seen the white horizon of this particular impediment that has been cast upon their future. So to me, I think in doing so, America has also to realize that it actually emboldens these countries, it makes them stronger, and also makes them realize that they can actually not only look at America, but all other partners like China, like in the Middle East, like we've seen with most African countries right now. If America is not helping in terms of loans, in terms of even maybe going a step further and imposing sanctions, we see leaders going to look for help in China and the East. So to me, I think in this regard, first of all, America has to know that when it actually preempts to put sanctions on certain African countries in a very, very much lopsided rationale, then it is actually also isolating itself. And number two, sanctions are put there to actually hurt the country as a whole. There is no any other particular leader perhaps who have suffered maybe the implications of the sanctions, and the nationalists have not suffered the implications of these sanctions. So whenever Zimbabwe continues being on sanctions, then the whole of Zimbabwe will feel the heat of the sanctions. Today, Zimbabwe, I believe, could be so many miles ahead of even South Africa had it not been for the sake of the retrogressive sanctions that has bedeviled Zimbabwe for so many years. Zimbabwe today would actually be roaring an economy in the league of South Africa, Egypt, and other African major economies, owing to the fact that these are people who are educated. These are countries that has massive resources in diamonds and all other mineral resources. But because we have these sanctions, it is so difficult for Zimbabwe to do business with the other Western countries. It is so difficult even for Zimbabweans to benefit from all the good things that come from the West, because their country is somehow limited and actually closed up. So to me, I think, Dr. Masanga, these sanctions should not be imposed on any government, because at the end of the day, it does not actually affect the leader in as much as it affects the local economy, and which trickles to the common man who is working to put bread on their table. And also, when we talk about the issue of sanctions, you talked about something very important, that these sanctions are actually biased. We've seen Africa strongmen like Paul Biya of Cameroon, who has been in power for more than 3 decades, not having sanctions being put on his country, simply because these are men who are dancing to the tune of the American imperialism. We've seen in history people like General Mobutu Sese Seko, who enjoyed the protection of the American imperialism and the CIA until when now they fell out is when he was actually toppled from government. But all this time when he was committing atrocities, including killing the Pan-Africanist Patrice Lumumba, he was not actually reprimanded, neither were sanctions put on DRC. So when we see USA and Western powers actually applying these sanctions selectively, it actually begs the questions, are these sanctions necessary? Are they being done to actually safeguard the common mwananchi, or are they done at the detriment of the common man in those particular countries? And the answer is simple. These sanctions are very, very retrogressive. These sanctions have implications which actually hit the common man more than the leadership. These sanctions are the reason why many African countries today are not quite well when it comes to their economic soundness. These sanctions have actually deteriorated global cooperation in terms of policy, in terms even of global terror, combating terror globally. So to me, I think following the path of isolation, path of putting more sanctions on African countries cannot work, and it will only isolate these countries in as much as it also isolates America in its path. And I was reading some articles 3 weeks ago, and the policymakers in the US are actually working on modus operandi where these sanctions actually, on many countries that the US has put sanctions on, they are lifted, in that US can also be able to put up and be able to compete with China, because as it is right now, China is overtaking the US, and simply because USA has put sanctions on so many countries, it has created more enemies than friends, and therefore it is actually also affecting its economy. So bottom line, Dr. Matsanga, sanctions are very implicating. Sanctions cannot work. Sanctions actually cripple the economies of these countries, and also the US has to realize that, and the West have to realize that when they put sanctions, they do not only harm themselves, but they also harm the other side. You always say that when you are digging a hole for your enemy, also leave a small space for yourself. I submit, Dr. Matsanga.
Thank you very much, viewers. Thank you, all of you, for having watched this program. We started late, but we did very well. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for those people under sanctions and those countries under sanctions. We shall continue to talk about them, and talking is maybe pumping some sense in countries that put sanctions on African countries. Let's use them uniformly without double standards. But for those on the African continent who are in opposition, to sit and think that sanctions can remove the leadership, they are just wasting their time. Let America come out and take head on with leaders that they think they don't like, other than just cutting about, beating about the bush. I thank you very much. This station is for Africa, with Africa, by Africa. Ciao.